When I finally wrote that first article and got it published about having limited hand dexterity, that was just one of the most freeing things that I ever did. And I didn't find a community that shunned me. I found a community that was accepting and understood.
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it. Hello, my beautiful sisters. On today's episode of A Sister's Love podcast, we will be having a guest, and her name is Michelle, and she'll be talking about the trauma that she experienced from having a learning disability and talk about how she advocates for students inside the schools right now as a teacher's aide. But before we get started, I would love to introduce myself. My name is Rose Jones, and I am just a woman who's trying to tell her story about experiencing domestic violence, battling with PTSD, and self-hate. I am just trying to keep it real about the struggles that I am facing in my life. And my goals for this podcast is to create a safe place for women to heal and tell their story. So if you are looking for a place to heal, then you are in the right place. I would love for you to become a weekly listeners. To do that, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you will never miss an episode of A Sister's Love podcast. I would love to introduce to you my guest for today. Her name is Michelle. Can you please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here on the show today?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle Steiner. I have a learning disability, and I work as a teacher's aide in a school with some of the students. They have disabilities and some of them don't. And I also work on the side as a disability writer and a photographer.
When you say writer, like what kind of things do you write?
I write disability articles. I have my own blog called Michelle's Mission, and I compare metaphors with life with having a learning disability.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So when you, can you tell our listeners a little bit of the challenges that you had when it came to your disability?
Sure. I have dyscalculia, which is the math learning disability. I have really struggled with how numbers work. I also have limited hand dexterity, so that can be hard for me with picking up objects or just trying to work things with my fine motor skills, such as locks. And I also have visual perception difficulties. And that's not with my eyes, but that's with my brain. So trying to coordinate my body can be really difficult for me.
I totally understand that because my son, he has ADHD, and his challenges that he have, a lot
Okay.
of people don't take the time out to try to understand the difficulties that he have and the focus and stuff like that. They just feel like a lot of
Mhm.
people that have disabilities should just figure it out and just adapt with everybody else. Like the other people around you don't have to try to make you fit in. They feel like, well, it is what it is, especially when it comes to the educational system. How do you feel when it comes to disabilities in the educational system? Like, what are some of the challenges that you have and some of the challenges that you're trying to overcome with being a teacher aide?
Well, some of the challenges, math has always been the biggest challenge for me. They didn't diagnose it as a specific learning disability at that point. I mean, we knew I had one in math, but there wasn't the name dyscalculia. Um, I was really lucky, though, that I got diagnosed when I was in kindergarten.
Oh,
During that time period, yeah, that I went to school all those years ago, not a lot of people knew about learning disabilities. I mean, the disabilities, especially hidden ones, were really something that a lot of people just didn't have a lot of knowledge of. Uh, so I was really lucky that I did get diagnosed with that, and that I sometimes there'll be people that you'll talk to that they were able to go through the school system and they struggled, but they just never got the help they needed. I was pretty lucky that mine stuck out like a sore thumb, and that led my teacher to realize, okay, she's having trouble with counting, she's having trouble with her eye-hand coordination, and I was also struggling socially. So they recommended that I get evaluated for having one. And sure enough, I had a learning disability. And yeah, I had to repeat kindergarten in a new school in our district. And I had some really great teachers that helped me, especially in learning support. And then I had other ones, I don't think they quite understood what it was. Even from the time I was little, a lot of times I either had people that tried to limit me to say, well, you can't do this, or other people that thought, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? And I can remember I got a W on my report card for indicating weakness for handwriting as a small child. And I had people that would judge me based on my handwriting as a character flaw, not as, well, this is something that's disability related, or that's just not in the cards for me to have great handwriting. So that was one of the ways. And I even got a lot of backlash with my peers from the time I was small. They knew that I went where I went to learning support. It was a pretty small school district, so you couldn't hide. And right away it came, well, that's not fair. You're getting this help that you're getting all this extra help, and I wish I had a disability so I could do easy work. And and a lot of them really didn't understand. This was really tough for me, and the work might have been considered easy for them, but for me, this was what I needed to do to be on my own level.
Yeah, I never heard most of the experiences that I have with my son is people pretty much trying to make his life a little harder. Not like they
Mhm.
don't think that it's unfair that he gets help, but they think like, oh, because you need extra help, you're different, and since you're different, that we should make fun of you because you're different because we don't understand
Yep.
why you're different. So a lot of kids they don't try to understand his differentness. They just try to make like, well,
Mhm.
you different, we should just get away from you because you're different. And since we don't understand it, we're just going to make fun of it. And that's a lot of things that we encounter with. And that gives him a lot of, because of that, he has a lot of anxiety. Like he got
Mhm.
more diagnosis on top of his diagnosis because of the anxiety that comes from school and just the title of disability or learning disabled. It gives him anxiety because he has like a 504 or a IEP. And with that, I
Mhm.
did my best to make sure he's not in a special individual class where it's just a whole bunch of kids with learning disability, because he still have a certain capacity to learn, but he just need a little assistance. He needs special assistance. So I try to keep him in a regular classroom, but him being in that classroom with kids that does not understand his disability makes it even worse. But it's still, like you said before, if they go into a classroom where it's all kids disability, they kind of limit you. They kind of limit his ability to learn, and he won't get the same education as all the other kids in his grade level. So if he's in eighth grade right now, he's learning at a sixth grade level, and I didn't want that. So it's hard to find a balance of making him feel comfortable and getting the education that he needs. So as
Right.
a teacher A, how do you go about that?
Well, one of the nice things is I was really lucky to also be eventually into regular ed classes too. For certain things, math never really worked out, but as a teacher's aide, I get that opportunity to go into regular ed classes because that is one of the things that they're doing now. The learning support room is basically where a child will go in like a study hall where it's structured, where they get help that they need, or they can get a test read to them, but it's not a self-contained classroom. So we have students that might be in a basic class that do have learning disabilities or do struggle with things such as reading. So I get that chance to go up and I get to reinforce some material with them that they maybe just missed and they need that extra help or some extra reading, because we have students that maybe can't read at grade level. So I can go in and I can be like, okay, I get a chance to read that to them, or just to help them in any way that we can, so we can keep them in those regular classes and really make it. And then when they're in the learning strategies in the resource room, I get a chance to further reinforce things. I get to go over spelling words with them. I get the chance to read a test to them. And that's stuff that a lot of my paras did whenever I was in school. We only had one or two, and now we have a lot more that are doing similar things to be able to try to help students.
That's awesome. So I have a question for you. So inside of your
Mhm.
school system, do you encounter teachers that don't want to apply by these rules when it comes to the kids
I'm
with the
really lucky.
oh, go
I
ahead.
am very lucky though that I have a lot of my staff that is just they want to help, they want to know what to do, and we try to problem solve on what it is that we do. So I have really encountered a lot of wonderful people that are just wanting to ensure student success.
That's awesome. Just because I have a lot of difficulties with a lot of teachers that pretty much saying
Right.
like, we're not giving him extra help. We're not going to give him extra time. We're not going to give you this. It's like a challenge that we have back and forth because I have some teachers that's very, very
Mhm.
old school. Like, this is the day is due. This is
Yeah.
what's done. This is how it needs to be done. It's no exceptions to the rule. And just fighting back against those teachers to get him what he's need to make sure
Mhm.
he's successful and getting them to understand is very difficult. Very difficult. And it's good that you're an
Definitely.
advocate for people of disability and in these schools because we need beyond the parents, we need other teachers and other staff members to understand like we're here to help, we're here to deliver that message when the teacher doesn't understand
Right.
it, the parent or the student.
Exactly. And this gives me the unique opportunity with someone that has a learning disability because excuse me, I definitely do understand what that is like. I can't, I mean, I may not encounter a lot of our staff now, but I can remember when I was in school, I did have a lot of great teachers, but I had some that would tell me, well, you have a learning disability. I don't think you can handle college because of your math. Or if I was in regular ed and I needed to have a test read to me, and I'd ask to go, and they would say, well, no, you're dependent too much on your learning support teacher. So I really try to understand and to show my students too how to advocate for themselves, how to go up to a staff member if they're struggling in their class and say, I need a little bit of help with that. And we sometimes will get a really scared kid that says, oh, I'm afraid to go up and they don't understand me. And we're like, well, this is how you do it. Just go up and say, I need help. And luckily, I've seen our staff members come over either to the room and they'll help them with their work if they when they have a plan period or they have some free time, or we can send them to a teacher for math help or other sources.
That's great. That
Mhm,
I wish our system was like that. Where
mhm.
are you located at?
We're located in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Oh, you're not that far from. I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, our system, like there's it's a learning curve with us, but I think it's getting better. It's
Mhm.
definitely getting a lot better. It's definitely getting a
Yeah,
lot better in the process of how we
right.
deal with kids with disabilities and things like that. So I totally
Exactly.
agree that the efforts, they're putting in a lot more efforts and they're putting a lot
Right.
of effort to keep them included in the general
Mhm.
population and making them don't feel they understand that they are different, but they don't want them to feel like they're different. You know, it's like do
Right.
anything and everything they can to make it feel normal for them, but still let them acknowledge them that they do need this extra help and it's okay to have extra help because even people
Yeah.
that don't have disabilities need extra help too.
Right, exactly. And that's sometimes when I'm with a lot of my students, it's sometimes it's like hearing a recording of myself in seventh grade.
Yeah,
I wish I didn't have an IEP. I wish I didn't have a disability. And I get that unique opportunity to say, well, it's all right if you have a disability, but it's not an excuse that you can't do anything because there are things that you can do. There are challenges you have, but that's why we try to get them to do a lot of the things that are on the IEP with the accommodations so they can take these a lot of these skills and they can apply them after they leave our classroom, but also after they're done with school, that they will know some strategies that can work for them.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Those IEP meetings is awesome. I love that they come in you do it like we do them like every year here, but you can reevaluate them at any time. You can challenge the IEP at any
Yeah.
time,
Hmm.
or you can upgrade it, or you can downgrade it based on how you feel like your child was doing. That's what I love. So they don't limit
Yeah.
that amount of interaction that you can have with the committee to make sure your child
Right.
is getting the support that they do need. Because before it wasn't
Exactly.
like that. It's like,
Right.
okay, this is what it was. Like you said, you was lucky. My son was lucky too. I was able to catch his in kindergarten
Mhm.
too. I
Oh,
caught his.
good.
Yeah, I caught his in
Yeah.
kindergarten also. And it's just like, it was a really quick, I'm like, something is wrong, something off. Like the way he's interacting is something in, and he was diagnosed with
Mhm.
ADHD in kindergarten. So we was able to have a lot of things in place. So as we grew in the school year, a lot of his stuff that was there before, we got dismissed off the IEP. So he had a lot of behavior things, reinforcements, which we had
Right.
to eliminate and change a little couple things around based on how he's progressing, based on the skills, the things that we had learned from, and the things that we had implemented throughout the year. So I think it's awesome. Um,
Good.
is it like any advice or any recommendations that you would like to give the listeners about dealing with people that have learning disabilities?
I think the first thing is to believe a person when they say that they have one. A lot of times I'll tell people I have a learning disability, and they'll say, "Well, you don't look disabled."
Yeah,
And yeah, they're looking for the disability and it's there. And I also get a lot of people that might know me for a number of years, and they know I have a disability and they know a lot of the struggles, but they'll say to me, well, you can't have a learning disability because have a bachelor's degree or you've gotten articles published. And while those statements are true, I still do have a learning disability. So I think it's definitely believing the person that they have the disability, and also just not running in to try to automatically fix things too.
yeah,
To give people, oh, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And did this cure it? And or comparing me to people that they know that have them.
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. Like coming in and try to be fix it, or trying to tell me how to live my life based on what you think you know, and like, this is my life, and the way I want to experience is the way I want to experience. I don't mind
Right.
recommendations, but like trying to force stuff down people's throat or not believing them is a big thing, because like, and people like
Right.
mental disabilities is invisible disability. So if they don't physically, like you said, they don't physically see the disability, they don't think it exists. And those invisible ones, those mental and those learning disabilities, are some 9 times 10 worse than the physical disabilities,
Right.
because they are limited. And it's like your mind is like paralyzing. Your mind can literally paralyze
Yep.
you if you don't have all the tools in place to help you move forward in life.
Exactly. And yeah, if you don't have those skills, or you don't have that, it's hard to move forward, especially with the math part, because a lot of people think, oh, you must have a reading disability.
Yeah.
And well, no, generally I'm a good reader. I struggled with reading comprehension, but I'm pretty fluent. And but as far as math goes, some people find it really hard to believe you can't read the face of a clock. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can see the numbers, I can see all of that, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there's not a whole lot I can do with that. People also don't understand, like, oh, left and right confusion. Uh, I have to hold my hands out, or if I'm putting shoes on a kid, a lot of times in the past, people have wondered, why did you put the shoes on the wrong feet of kids when I worked in childcare? And it's like, well, I can't tell what shoes the right or the left.
Yeah.
And another thing, yeah, a lot of people, because they can't see it, my visual perception isn't with my eyes, it's with my brain. So driving is something that I just is not in my best interest to do. And a lot of people don't get that. They'll say, well, I know somebody that has a learning disability and they can drive. And I said, well, there are people who can, but this is just where my brain and disability is.
Yeah. It's like not comparing. Yeah, that comparison like is
Mhm.
not gonna help. Like just understand my situation, and we can move on from based on what I need, you know.
Yep.
That compares, I don't, well, people do it anyways, regardless if you have a
Oh,
disability or not.
yeah,
It's something that
exactly.
we all do. We compare to make sure to see how things work, and like, well, if this does this, you should be able to do this and this and that. No, everybody is individuals. We are all one person. We all have our own personality, all limits,
Right.
reaches, and if just anybody in life, regardless of disability or not. It's things like, well, your mother can sing, why can't you? Because that's my mom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we're all
You,
different.
you share the same DNA. Why can't you do what she do? Because I'm a different person. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
a lot of people don't
Agreed.
understand that. Like they just assume because you're in a certain environment or you experience a certain thing that you should be able to do something that somebody else is able to do it. I'm not saying that you not. It's just it will take a little bit more effort for you to accomplish that. And it's some things that you're just like, oh, just not in my scope of being wanted to do is not that important to me. Like it's because
Right.
it's important to you doesn't mean like driving. Like it's really not that important to me. I can get around. I've been going around pretty fine without it,
Yep.
so I don't need to. But I really think you should. And like trying to force something because you see somebody else do
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
I mean, I find a way to do what I need to do. Like I live in a central location, so I'm able to walk to places. My husband can take me to work. I have great coworkers and that are able to take me home, and I have friends and family. So we find ways to make things work, and that might work for other people. And but I have to, as long as we're getting to the place that we need to go, then well, yeah.
exactly. Exactly, because this make me think about it when my sister, she doesn't drive either. And I'm like, girl, you need to get your driver's license. Like, you too grown to be doing this. And I just thought about that. Like, I just did that. Like, that's horrible. Yeah, because I'm like, well, you're a certain age. You need to have your driver's license. Everybody else got their driver's license. Why you? But she doesn't. Not that she does not. She just does not want to drive. She felt
Mhm.
comfortable the way she conducts her life. And I'm like, I need to just leave her alone. Let that be.
Right.
Let her
Yeah.
make her own decisions. Yeah.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
that it might work for her. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of my peers, I mean, I had friends who were older, which that helped, but a lot of the peers that I went to school with, they didn't understand it. They said, well, eventually you're going to want to get your license and you're going to want to have that freedom. And having friends who were older and more mature, it wasn't really too much of an issue for them. So yeah, it just wasn't something, it worked for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely. Like we just gotta allow people to do what they want to do with their life and
Yep.
how they want to move about it. I totally no
Mhm.
judgment, no
Yep.
like no judgment. Because what I notice a lot lately is that a lot of
Mhm.
people with disability is moving great through life. Like they're moving like the level of the way the world has came to accept a lot of people with disability and the way we adapt and allowing them to be in every space is amazing.
It is because I can even remember growing up, you didn't want to talk about having a disability. That was considered something, I mean, we weren't in institutions at that point as much, but people just didn't want to talk about it. It was almost like you had this shameful secret. And it just really, if somebody did find out and, the bullying and things, it was really hard. And I can remember writing has always been a release to me. And I had a friend that told me, she goes, you really should write about having a disability. And I thought, oh no, I don't know if that's such a good idea. And I put it on the back burner. But when I finally wrote that first article and got it published about having limited hand dexterity, that was just one of the most freeing things that I ever did. And I didn't find a community that shunned me. I found a community that was accepting and understood.
Yeah, we'll have our community for everything. So we
Mhm.
think that the how can I say it? Like we have these things that about us that we think is the bad things about us, and usually it's the thing that God created about us that makes us stand out, and it's the thing that God want us to share with the world
Mhm.
to help other people. So with the things that we resist the most, it's the things that we should be sharing the most.
Exactly, because you find other people that are like, I struggle with that. And I thought I was the only person who did that. And you gave me the verbiage to be able to describe it. So, and yeah, exactly. We can help others.
Thank you. Like it's back to like yeah, like you just said, putting words to actions or feelings. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I experienced that. I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was something that was normal, and I didn't know exactly what was going on with me. And just having those articles or those resources where you're reading stuff, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like me, I have
Yeah.
experienced a lot of trauma, and I didn't know. I thought. I used to feel overwhelmed and I used to tired up. I used to just think that I had low energy or stuff like that. I went to the doctor, therapy. They couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. And then I was reading an article and it pretty much told me like, because I experienced trauma for so long, my body was always in fight, flight or run mode.
Right.
And now that I'm in a safe place, it's coming down from all of that and it's
Right.
exhausted from running and fighting for 35 years. So my
Right.
body, it's time for it to rest. And it's like, I'm tired. I got to catch up.
Exactly. Yeah, because you get that connection with other people.
Yeah. You learned a lot about yourself and a lot of other people. And you also learn how to support other people too with those articles and resources.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Yeah, you get to learn new things about
Mhm.
the world. And that's another thing I like. I like learning new things about things that I never knew about. Like
Mhm.
especially when my son was ADHD, I learned so much because every article I see or every video I see, I'm watching it because he's doing stuff and things is happening that I don't understand. I'm like, if I can read something, I can find a way to help him, and so that he don't feel excluded or I don't do
Mhm.
something that rub him wrong. And I just don't understand like why he's not listening, why it's like this, and just not like he's not being defiant. It's just that he just doesn't understand. And I'm just learning ways to help him understand so I can communicate with him so that we're all on the same level playing and it doesn't feel like he's getting in trouble or outcast based on me not able to communicate with him.
Right, exactly, because you get that perspective of somebody especially someone that's been through it. I think sometimes that is a unique perspective too. And what I try to do on my blog is I do point out the terms that they might diagnose somebody with a learning disability and explaining what it is, but I use metaphors to explain it. And a lot of the metaphors come from nature or just other concepts. And I find that makes it's not dumbing it down, but it is making it in a way that somebody who's reading this can understand.
Totally. And can you give us an example of one of those metaphors?
Sure. One of the ones I did was I love tea. I have a collection of teapots and tea. So I did, there's all these different varieties of tea. So I talked about some of the different kinds of learning disabilities and that might be in a tea. And one of them was my cup of tea. And that was talking about that I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but, there's different. Uh, different people might have different perspectives on things. So that was one of them that I did. I did traveling with a disability for over the summer. And I talked about what life is like when you travel with having a learning disability or just my journey of traveling through life. And I got to talk about some of the adventures my husband and I like to go on and how we travel with that. I also did one about a lot of with nature ones because I love to take pictures of flowers, and I did the Garden of Having a Learning Disability. So we'll talk about flowers and how they might bloom, and just how the process that a flower goes through is similar to having a learning disability.
That's awesome. And I see that you talk about your husband a lot. I was like, did you have any challenges when it come to dating when it came to your disability?
With him, no. I've had other people though that it was hard. I can remember I was doing an internship and I had my supervisor say, somebody may not want to date you because of your disability. And I can remember she was correct. I mean, I was terrified at that point, like, oh, am I ever going to meet somebody? And I can remember I had an ex who, when I was he was breaking up with me, he said, I think you could drive if you wanted to, and I'm tired of giving you rides. So that was pretty tough. And I've had other people that have outright rejected me. They said, I don't think I can be in a relationship with you because of some of the disabilities. And while those things were really hard to hear, I think God had somebody very special for me in mind.
Yeah.
And I just had to get to that point where I just prayed. I said, God, don't send me anybody until this is the one you have for me. And on our very first date, I told him I had a learning disability. And he said, well, how does that make you feel? And he was the first person that ever asked me that. And there have been challenges when we first were dating or like getting more serious, just trying to understand just certain things that I couldn't do, or there was just maybe this wasn't going to be the right program for me. But we've worked through a lot of those things, and he is just definitely such a blessing to me in my life with helping me and just being my life partner.
That's awesome. So it is love. It's somebody out here for everyone. So a lot of people think that like, well, if I have a disability, I have to date somebody with a disability because they're going to be the only person that understands me. And I don't think that. I think that it's a person for everybody. And I think that as long as you find somebody that understands you and willing to support you in your process, that you shouldn't just date or just be with somebody just because they want to be with you. You got to make sure they're the right person, the person that's going to support you and understand what you're going through and to help you grow and prosper in the process of your relationship.
Right, because if you have a disability, maybe that would be a good situation. God might have somebody in mind for you that does have a disability, but it's not a requirement. Sometimes you can date someone who doesn't, or be in a relationship with. I remember struggling with that as well. There was an older person that was in my life, nice person, had a disability, and everyone tried to encourage me, well, you should go out with him. You're going to be on equal footing with this person. And I'm like, well, that he's a nice guy, but I just don't have that. I don't have that connection with them. Yeah. And there was another person somebody tried to fix me up with, and he did have a disability, and it wasn't the disability that turned me off. It was just his personality. And I knew that just wasn't the right person for me. So I think it's keeping your options open, but I think you have to have those feelings for another person, and you're not anybody, whether you're the person with a disability or the person without one. You're not necessarily going after somebody because, hey, you got a disability. It's because you love the person, you have that connection, and you have those feelings.
I totally agree. So before we end this episode, I would love for you have any advice or anything that you want to say to the listeners before we end the episode?
My advice would be for a person that does have a disability, or somebody that knows somebody that does have one, is to encourage them to know what they want and to just keep on finding different ways to do it, because success might come in a different package and it might be something better than you originally thought.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Can you please tell the listeners your social media handles and your website or your blog site so they can check it out?
Sure. You can find me at Instagram at Steiner7250. And I'm also on Facebook with Michelle Steiner. And you can also find me at my blog at michellesmission.blog.
All right. Thank you. And I'll see you guys next week.
Well, that's it for this episode of a Sisters Love podcast. But before we end, I want to invite you to our new group. Yes, it's a new group. This group is exclusive for this podcast listeners. This group is perfect for women to come together, share experiences, ask questions, and get access to exclusive resources. In this group, you can meet those amazing guests. You'll get access to resources, and you'll find support. This is a judge-free zone, so you never have to worry about feeling unheard or alone. To get access to this group, all you have to do is join our mailing list. To do that, all you do is click the link below and put your email in, and then you'll get instant access to the support group. Until next time, love you, your sister through love, Rose.